Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Gemology for Schmucks. My name is Peter Nelson, and I'm here to guide you in everything you need to know about gemstones. Today, I want to try and answer a question that everybody who's interested in gemstones needs to ask themselves at some point. Do I need to study about gemstones? The short answer is yes. Yes, you do. The longer answer is no, maybe not. Oh, and by the way, if you are a regular watcher of these videos and you haven't hit subscribe yet, please do that now. Let's continue. So let me unpack that for you. The short answer is yes, yes you do, because everybody, regardless of how you study about gemstones, needs to make sure that they are learning about gemstones. If you're going to be involved with gemstones, if you are unaware of what the gemstones are, how to distinguish them from other gemstones, and the factors that make that gemstone unique, then you are not going to have the information that you need to trade in or appreciate the gemstone. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about something that's value is determined not only by its beauty and durability, but also, importantly, its rarity. And so if you do not understand the qualities of a thing, how can you know what's rare? Regardless of what you collect in the world, whether it's gemstones or playing cards or, I don't know, postage stamps, the things that are valuable are the ones that are not seen often. So you need to know what's out there. And the more that you know of what's common, the easier it is to see and understand what is rare. Why? Because it's simply new. Not just new to you, but new. So the longer answer of do I need to study gemstones in a school, or do I need to become a gemologist? That answer is maybe not. That depends on you and what you want to do in the gemstone trade. Not everybody becomes a gemologist. There are many dealers and jewelry designers that do not have gemological training. Many of them come from gem communities or gem families and have just been surrounded by gemstones for a long time. So they know what is common and what is not common. They know the typical prices for what qualities of stones. And oftentimes their knowledge is very, very specialized. They may only deal in blue sapphires or only deal in emeralds, for example. And they know the treatments that are common for those stones. They may not be able to look at the stone and know if it's treated or not. Especially as history moves on, that type of knowledge becomes more and more specialized and more difficult for the average person to just see with something cheap like a loupe. Even a gemologist such as myself has to send that stone to a lab so they can use advanced machines to test the stone and verify, is it this treatment or is it that treatment or no treatment at all? So many people do not go and study gemology, but they need to be aware of what common treatments are and the qualities of those stones that they're dealing with. That's non-negotiable. Now, for those of you who think like me and say, I would like to have an intimate understanding of these gemstones, and I would like a strong foundation in order to understand the conversation of those who know more than me, a gemological program can give you that, absolutely. So if you're ready to apply yourself and you want to go and get a gemological degree, how do you go about choosing the school? Now, regardless of where you study in the world, there are a few options. The first two major options are, do I go and study in person or do I study online? Let me break that down first because it's the most common question I get. Many people consider studying gemstones through correspondence, and typically that's online. And I will say the only people that should do that are people that are already working in the gemstone industry and have some exposure to gemstones. The reason I say that is because when you are studying gemology, you need to see a lot of stones. When you study gemology through correspondence, they will send you a test kit of stones that you can obviously test and learn how to use the gemological instruments. But the amount of stones that you get to see in that way is completely different from what you would get to see if you were actually in a school. The gemstone collections are obviously very different sizes. The one that they are willing to send to you and not afraid of you just absconding with, compared to what they get to monitor in their own facility, are orders of magnitudes of difference. It's not the same education. You will be using the same books, and whether your lectures are delivered on Zoom or through a pre-recorded video, the information is probably going to be about the same. Depends on the program and how they run it. So correspondence, honestly, if you're really looking to understand gemstones in a more intimate way, then my suggestion is avoid correspondence because yes, you are paying less on tuition, but consider that a loss in value of the education that you are getting. That's my opinion. But I say that as somebody who has gone through a full gemological program, but I'm comparing that against the experience of what I know I got out of my program in that amount of time and what I would be able to do with less resources. Saving a few $1,000s is not worth it. Because at the end of the day, if you're studying about gemstones, what you're doing is you're investing in your ability to not make mistakes. Gemstones are expensive. Rubies, sapphires, emeralds oftentimes are several $1,000s per carat. And so if you think about it, if your tuition can save you from making one mistake on one deal, ever, then it was worth its value. And I promise you that education will do more than just protect you from one mistake. I mean, I promise you not knowing your life, but I'd be willing to wager. Maybe not with Mephistopheles. So to the next question, which school is best? And that really goes back to you. And what do you want to do in the gem trade? Do you want to be academic? Do you want to be a gem trader? Do you want to be a jewelry designer? Do you want to do something else entirely? Each of the major schools, if you just Google gemology schools like I did, then you're going to see a few names pop up more often. The biggest name is not necessarily the best. It is the most recognized, but the gemologists that come out of that program are not head and shoulders above the rest. I have met them. I have listened to their conversation. I know. Because facts are, when you come out of a basic gemological education, you are not going to know everything. It's really a launching point for you to learn more. Because gemology is an unending study. Learning more always has additional value and you will never get to the end because it's connected to the fundamental mysteries of our world. And no, that is not hyperbole. So if you've done some soul searching and you've told yourself, you know, I just want to deal in gemstones. I want to buy, I want to sell. That's awesome. I don't feel particularly artistic, but I love beauty. So I don't want to design jewelry. I just want to buy and sell gemstones. Cool, fine. I'm glad that you can be honest with yourself. At that point, what you need is the right information. You don't care about the diploma. So there are some people that just buy and sell gemstones without ever getting a gemological education. If you feel that you need the gemological education, just like many of the gem dealers will send their children to a gemological program for the one reason of giving them a foundation so that they can learn the more advanced secrets that they will need to be truly successful and take over the family business. So oftentimes gem families or people from gem communities will send their kids to the big name schools. They pay more for tuition because they want that reputation, and also, just like going to an Ivy League school, you make different types of connections, and those business connections can be invaluable in the days to come. Years, lifetime. Because really, gemstones are not just gemstones, they're also the transfer of gemstones between powerful people. Because even from the oldest of days into now, we're still talking about powerful people vying to get control over these rare, valuable things. So the first name likely to pop up in a Google search is going to be the GIA, the Gemological Institute of America. And contrary to the name, it is not only in America, they have campuses worldwide. And they also have an online component. Now the GIA's curriculum is mostly standardized, so it doesn't really matter which teacher you get. Each teacher is pretty much confined to what the curriculum says, with a very little margin for putting their own personality into the course. I say that not having studied in their program, though I have taken their AGP program, which is the Diamond Essentials, Jewelry Essentials, and Colored Stone Essentials program. And I would argue that that's mostly a selling tool. It is valuable information if you're going to work in a jewelry shop or dabble in gemstones. It's a lot of good information, but it's not going to make you a gemologist. Their long-form GG program, Graduate Gemologist, is what many gem professionals go and get. And as you might have guessed from the name, that will make you a gemologist. You will know how to test gemstones and be aware of typical treatments. Whether or not you are proficient at identifying those treatments is another question. So the big name is going to be GIA and their GG program. If you're interested in getting the stories and experience of teachers who are active in the trade or have a history of being active in the trade, then you should consider the school that I went to, and that is AIGS. AIGS is located here in Bangkok, and just like GIA, AIGS also has a gem lab, and the gem lab and the gem school are separate. There are a few key differences, in my opinion, between GIA's GG program and AIGS's AG program. Both of them have rigorous curriculum, but the difference is the type of teacher. AIGS has attracted a number of experienced gem-dealing teachers because those teachers are still allowed to deal in gemstones while they're active as teachers. GIA does not permit that. As a massive corporate entity, they also have a lot of other regulations on what their staff can and cannot do while being active staff. And that's not just whether or not they're on the clock or off the clock. If you work for us at this time, you can or cannot do this, and if you can do it, then you have to do it in this way with all this paperwork, blah, 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 blah. That was a massive turnoff for me. And just to pump the brakes for a second and talk about context for a minute, before I got into gemology, I was an English teacher overseas, mostly in China and Korea, for the better part of a decade. So for me, I know that a school and the name of a school is not as important as the teachers that are at that school. A curriculum helps, but a solid teacher is the real difference between a good education and a meh education or a piece of paper. Now that's not to slander any particular program, but it is to say that if you do not capitalize on teachers first, in my opinion, you are never going to have peak quality academics. So once I did a cursory exploration of the different schools that were out there, I went and looked at What can I see about their staff? And then I came in person to Thailand while I was still working as an English teacher in Korea to decide, is this where I really want to put my money? Is this the life that I want to dive into? And fortunately for me, when I went to AIGS, I was able to talk to an active student, get the real scoop on what's the situation, what are your teachers like, what do they know, what do they not know? How do they carry themselves? What kind of stories do they tell? And after I was able to dig into that and get some real information from an individual, not just a corporate representative, then I was able to make my decision and say, AIGS is the direction I want to go. They have trade active staff, and they also have a huge stone library. And what I mean by that is a collection of gemstones for you to study and examine while you're in your programs. So most of the time in our program, you would have lectures in the morning, and in the afternoon you'd have the lab section where you could take out gemstones, examine them, test them using the instruments and the techniques that you are being taught in class. And the difference of being able to actively put your hands on the stones and a large variety of stones creates a very different education from doing it in correspondence. So the major difference, in my opinion, is that AIGS is not a huge name. However, it does have trade active and very experienced teachers and a large stone library. The other major gem school that you should consider is from the Gemological Association of Great Britain, sometimes known as GEMA, and they have an FGA program. The FGA program is oftentimes considered the most rigorous scientifically, and I'll back that up by saying that their tests are oftentimes long-form essays where they're asked something abstract like, tell me everything you know about asterism, and you have to write in long form, how do the mechanics of asterism work? What stones might have it? What's the difference between real and treated asterism, etc., etc., etc. And so it can be argued that that is more rigorous scientifically. That is not to say that all of their students at GEMA or the FGA program will necessarily be better than the AIGS program's AG or GIA's GG. Each of the programs can put out exceptional and competitive gemologists, but they tend towards different directions. So many people that work in labs will go with the FGA. Now, for those of you who are more scientifically bent, the FGA will be very interesting. And if I were to go back and get additional training, I would consider also getting the FGA in addition to my AG. But that's not something I feel is a priority right now. It's much better instead to get these specialized books on individual gemstones and dig into the nitty-gritty of those stones. You don't necessarily need another gemological training, because once again, each of these programs is a foundation. And if you do want to work in the lab, don't pretend that any of these programs is going to give you everything you need to know in order to know everything about gemstones. It's not the case. Most of the time, senior gemologists are not people that just have a gemological degree. Most of the times, they will actually have a master's or a PhD in either chemistry or physics, as both of these will enable them to perform the tests that they need on the advancing and more complex treatments that are being developed in this day and age. So they would rather take somebody who's gone through that heavy science training and then give them either a GG or an AG or the FGA. Science plus an understanding of the kind of art science of gemology. And to wrap that up, I will say there are other schools out there, and by all means do explore them, but I suggest looking at it using the lens that I just described. What's their reputation like? What can you find out about their teachers? And do they have a lab that's respected worldwide? Look around in forums, ask other gemologists, have you ever heard of this school? Because if they haven't heard of it, it's probably a bad sign. If they have heard of it, it can be either really good or a really bad sign. So look around, decide what's important to you, and I will really stress, do not think about tuition. The price of tuition should not be the most important thing on your list. The most expensive school is not necessarily the best school, but at the same time, trying to cheap out and do the correspondence course is not going to give you the same experience that studying in person will. And furthermore, I'll say, the advantage of studying in a place like Bangkok, where you are surrounded by the gem trade, is you get to study an actual academic course, get all the know-how, and then the same day you can come down into the gem market, look and feel the stones, and get that functional knowledge that you will need to actually trade in gemstones and to really have a deep understanding of gemstones. Class is not enough to make you a proficient dealer in gemstones. As always, I appreciate you for joining me. If you've got any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and tell all of your friends. And until next time, bye-bye.